Welcome to the podcast that will teach you how to successfully invest in and build steady streams of passive income from the highly lucrative niche of mobile home park investing. Veteran real estate investors Kevin Bupp and Charles Dehart from Mobile Home Park Academy will personally share with you the valuable lessons they've learned along their journey as mobile home park investors, so that you too can learn how to build massive cash flow and huge profits from this extremely lucrative niche. So without further ado, let's welcome your hosts for today's show, Kevin Bupp and Charles Dehart.
Welcome, guys and gals, to the Mobile Home Park Investing Podcast, where we'll provide all the information that you need to know to successfully locate, negotiate, close on, and make huge profits from the lucrative niche of mobile home park investing. I'm your host, Kevin Bupp, and I'm joined today with my co-host and business partner, Charles Dehart. Charles, what's the word, man?
I guess the bird's the word, man.
I was trying to catch you off guard on that one. I haven't said that to you in a while. So today, Charles, the database show, this is it, man. This is where all the magic takes place. This is where it all kind of comes together. So I know we've been excited about this, the third part of this 3-part series, getting into the database component of, because this is really what's going to help folks separate themselves from everyone else in this industry. And so just before I know we got some housekeeping items and things like that we want to run through, but just real quick, what can folks expect to walk away with today from this database show?
Yeah, the overall goal here is to allow you to control your own destiny and your own deal flow. That is what you can expect from doing this. That you're no longer relying on brokers for all of your deal flow. And this just makes it more comfortable to be an investor. That's really all it is.
Yeah. I love brokers. We've got a lot of friends, lots of great relationships that are brokers. So this is by no means a jab against brokers, but what this will allow you to do is essentially not be on your knees begging for a great deal from a broker. This, again, control your own destiny, source your own leads, and not have a ton of competition, which is what's out there today in the marketplace. So anything that it gets into a broker's hands, it ends up going out into the marketplace, it's their job. Brokers' main priority is to get the highest and best price for their customer, their client, which is the park owner at that point in time, right? And so we get it. I understand their business, but this will allow you to hopefully not fully circumvent it, but not rely solely on brokers to bring you leads. And with that being said, Charles, I know we've got a very special announcement that we want to mention today. So I know we're going to kind of hold off on it, but let's go ahead and make that announcement now, because I think it's so important, and it's of a ton of value to folks that have spent the time to listen to these last couple of episodes in this 3-part series. And as most of you are probably aware, if you've been listening to the show for any amount of time, last year, Charles and I developed an incredible educational platform at the Mobile Home Park Academy that taught how to master the art of finding, operating mobile home parks. But due to the overwhelming interest that we had and just the sheer amount of time needed to properly service our customers that bought into the educational program, we actually decided to pull it off the market. It wasn't really intended by any means. In fact, the demand was overwhelming. It was a very positive thing, right? It's a good problem to have, but it actually became much more of a challenge than we anticipated. And it took us away from our own investing business. I mean, we buy parks too. We practice what we preach. And so we've spent the last year working on a solution to repackage this educational program in a way that would still offer the same tremendous amount of value of the original product, but would also allow us to continue running our investment company and not run into the same time constraints that we experienced that first time around. And so with that, we'd like to reintroduce to you guys the revamped Deal Finders formula. And this is basically a culmination of all of our efforts, the educational platform that we had developed last year, repackaged in a way that will allow us to offer it on a continual basis. We won't take it back off the shelf. We won't pull it away from you guys, because I know there's a lot of you that have actually, Charles, I can't even keep track of the number, but we get emails on a daily basis from folks that really wanted to get into the Academy program that we developed last year. I mean, even today we get them, and we have to turn people away because we just weren't in a position to offer the time necessary to help folks get into this business. The program was there. but it took a lot of our personal time as well. And obviously, we each have our own bandwidth that we have available, and we ran out of that last year. And we tried it with this revamp. We're trying to not do that this time around, and I think we've nailed it. I think we got the formula down to where we can help folks in an unlimited manner and for an indefinite period of time without faltering our own personal investment business. So, guys, if you have an interest in learning more about this program, learning more about the training, you can actually just go over to our website. We actually created a dedicated website for it. It's dealfindersformula.com. You can check it out, read more about it, and we love to work with you. We love to teach this business. Charles, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that regarding the Deal Finders Formula, but I know that you're excited. We're all excited here at Sunrise to be putting this back out there in the marketplace.
Yeah. This is a for us, this didn't exist when we got started, and if it had, it would have saved us a ton of time and a ton of wasted effort. And we'll go into sort of some details about what's included inside of this course. But I think anyone getting started who's serious needs to go to this course, needs to take the online training into it.
Yeah, so hang out, guys, to the end of the show, and we'll actually go into some more detail. We don't want to take up too much time here in the beginning because we want to get on to the database component. But towards the end of the show, we're actually going to go give you a general overview of what you can expect to learn and take away from this new revamped package we put together. So with that, a couple other housekeeping items I want to get through, Charles, before we get on to the show here is we mentioned this the last couple of weeks, is that we're hiring here at Sunrise Capital Investors. That's the investment arm of our company. And I just tell you that there's some specific positions that we're hiring for, which you can find more information about by going to careers.sunrisecapitalinvestors.com. But I will tell you that we're always seeking top talent to join the team here. And so even if the position that you see listed isn't something that is your unique skill set, but you feel like you could bring a ton of value to our team, we'd love to hear from you. I mean, we're growing this rockstar organization. We've got some awesome team members that are part of our team. And if you'd love to work with a very talented group of folks that are just doing big things in this space, then we'd love to hear from you. Again, go to careers.sunrisecapitalinvestors.com. In addition, a couple weeks ago, we offered for the first time a free giveaway. It's a big one too. It's our due diligence video training that we put together last year. Charles and I had just acquired a mobile home community here in Florida, in Central Florida, and we had a 2-day due diligence seminar that we put on for about 40 folks, where we literally spent an entire day in the field and an entire day in the classroom. And so the video that we put together for you guys is literally a 2-hour, very thorough analysis as we walk through this community that we just purchased. I mean, it's live, it's in person. We're on site there at the property. And it's actually before we started doing work to the property. We had just acquired it. We hadn't even really started on the capital improvements at that point in time. We walked through every detailed aspect of what we were going to do to that property and how we were going to achieve that. And so folks paid a lot of money to attend this training, but we're essentially giving it away to you guys. No strings attached. It's free. There's no catch whatsoever. All you have to do is go over to DD, and that stands for due diligence. So dd.sunrisecapitalinvestors.com to grab your free copy. Next up, guys, if you're an accredited investor and you have an interest in partnership opportunities, we have a lot of them. We've got a lot of deals in our pipeline, lots of great opportunities in contract today. If you have an interest in partnering with us on these opportunities and you're an accredited investor, you can learn more about that opportunity over at sunrisecapitalinvestors.com. There's a link that says investors. It's up the top tab. Click on that and you can see all the current offerings that we have available. And lastly, guys, before we get on to it, just want to remind you, if you love what we're doing here, if you love the content that we share with you on a weekly basis, take a moment, go over to iTunes, subscribe to the show, rate and review it. If you're not an iTunes user, you can go to Stitcher, Google Play, SoundCloud, and I know there's multiple other methods that folks listen to the show, but leave us a rating, leave us a review. It really helps us grow the show and just lets us know that we're doing a good job. If you like what we're doing here, share it as a review, and it really helps us. It confirms the fact that what we're sharing with you guys is of value and that you're finding a way to implement it into your own business. So with that being said, Charles, let's get on to it. I know that folks are here for one reason and one reason only. That's because they want to learn how to build this database, man. This is it. Like, this is the magic pill, and you're the man to teach them how to do it, because this is what you've literally mastered over the past 4 or 5 years. You've had a team of virtual assistants overseas that have been helping you build this what started out as a few hundred, now it's many of thousands, a database of mobile home parks in this database. And it's really what we consider to be our secret sauce and the way that we can continually bring great deals into our pipeline, even in a very tight real estate market that we find find ourselves in many parts of the country today. So with that being said, my friend, roll with it. Tell us how we go about building this database.
Well, first, I want to handle one thing. There's if you're an investor you're a real estate investor coming from another industry, it's worth pointing out that in this industry, mobile home park industry, you can't buy a list of property owners the same way that you could in apartments or single family homes. So what we mean by that is most of these list sourcing companies, when you go tell them what type of list that you want, basically in single family home, give you an example, would be I want to see all of the owners of homes in this neighborhood. Actually, the UPS can give you that. The post office could give you that list, but you can't do that in mobile home parks. And a lot of the reasons why is because of the differences of how the cities zone them. I know in our portfolio, we've got everything from vacant land zoning, because there's no mobile home park zoning in that area. There's zonings that are general commercial 2, general commercial 1. Every area has a different definition of what's allowed in those. And so very few areas actually have mobile home park zonings, and the mobile home parks they classify in that zoning are only classified there because they were built after that zoning was created. So a lot of these parks it's hard for the list sourcing companies to go through and actually segment out that list to give you mobile home parks, because there's really nothing to go off of to give that to you. So it's very challenging to do that. There are ways to get a list of the mobile home parks in an area, but as we all know from a list sourcing company, what they also give you is the owner, and it's updated because they aggregate that data sort of real time. They give you the ownership information and the address, and they give you specific parcel details and everything else, like when it last sold, all that stuff. So in this industry, you have to build that list, and you have to handle the updating of that list in-house. You're the only one that can do that, because you can't go out to an outside party. At least today, you can't go out there and do that. So that's probably the first thing we need to cover is, and really for you guys that are getting started, this is a huge opportunity for you. It just means that it's so difficult for other people to come in this industry and utilize this strategy that if you're using it, you've already got a leg up. Where do you want to start, Kevin? Do you just want to roll right into building a list?
Yeah, I think so, right? I mean, that's why folks are here. And I think that you make a valid point there. So before we do get on, I mean, that is it. And so just to kind of solidify what Charles had just said there regarding like, you just can't go out and buy this list. Not a lot of people know this. I mean, we're sharing it with you guys here today, but this isn't a readily available bit of information that you can track down. That there's other trainings out there on this topic. I mean, this really will allow you to set yourself apart from the competition. Now, it does take time, it takes dedication, but if you're willing to put in the work that others aren't, you're going to have the results that others aren't having. So, I mean, that's really what it comes down to. If you want to buy good quality mobile home parks and not be competing against, 5, 10, 15, 20 other buyers in the same deal and overpaying for it, this is how you do it. So with that being said, Charles, let's go ahead and roll into it, my friend.
Sure. Yeah. So the base of the list is going to be the list of actual mobile home parks in a market. And one of the best places to go for that is going to be, mhvillage.com. And what you're going to do there, it's very simple. You'll just type in the name of, usually, go back to your market selection and just type in the main city of that market. And what it'll do is it'll take you to basically a list of mobile home parks in that market. And again, this is a lot easier to see on video, but when you go do this, you'll have this list. It'll actually take you to mobile homes. It won't even take you to mobile home parks. So the first thing you'll have to do is click on communities on the website. It'll take you to a list of communities. And then all you have to do is simply click on a community within that list. And at the bottom of that community's page, their actual community page will be a list of basically all of the communities in nearby cities. And on that list, there'll be a section that says more, and you click on that button and it'll take you to a list of all of the cities that have mobile home parks, and it'll tell you how many mobile home parks in each one of the cities. And then you can just open each city from there and start databasing those. Now, again, this is a lot easier to see on video. One of the things that MH Village also has is they have you can advertise your community there. So if you see things like a showcase community, don't click on that one because that's an ad for, a community owner. And they, from that ad, they've removed the functionality to where you can go find other communities for obvious reasons. That's the easiest way to actually get a list of mobile home parks in an area. In MH Village, I found to be they don't have all of them, but they've probably got about 75% of them. So it's a pretty good list to start with. And as you database these parks, and I usually plot them on Google Earth as well, so that, some of the addresses don't tie out. So when we plot these parks, you usually see other parks in the area too. So you can go ahead and database those as well. But that's how you actually build the list of mobile home parks. And again, this is just starting a list that you'd be able to buy from any other industry. This is like the very basics of it. And this is sort of time consuming to do this part of it.
Mm-hmm. So Charles, real quick before we go on, when you plot these on Google Earth, you'd mentioned that MH Village really only has probably about 75% of the parks out there in existence today. When you're plotting them on Google Earth, you'd mentioned that you kind of you do a visual scan of the area to see if there's any other parks that might have been missing from that original MH Village list, and then go ahead and database those as well. Is there any kind of a system to that process, or is it just literally a visual scan of the area looking for other aerial images that look like mobile home parks are quite easy to identify based on their layout. I mean, it's you got numerous rooftops that are all little rectangular boxes, some wider than others with double wides, but they're very easy to identify from visual scan. But is there a particular system that you put into place to scan an area, or it's a manual process? Yeah,
it's very simple. This is definitely something you're gonna have a VA do. So what I instruct them to do is I instruct them to scrape all of these leads out of here. And recently what we started to do is actually use software to scrape this out. Software works pretty good to scrape it out and put it into like an Excel file or a CSV file. So once they have that and they go plot on Google Earth, what they'll do is plot every single one of the parks. They can plot. If they can't find one, they'll highlight it in yellow. That kind of tells me when I come back in a quality check to put some effort into finding this one. But they'll plot them all on Google Earth. And then after they're done, what I tell them is that most of these mobile home parks in these areas, they're sort of clustered in a sense, or they're at least on main roads most of the time. So they'll zoom out on Google Earth to about 5,000 feet of elevation. And what they'll do is they'll look at in that market where the clusters of parks are, and they'll start there, and they'll search in a radius of all those just all the areas around that cluster of parks, and usually they'll find one like that. Or I'll tell them to go and look at the main roads and really focus their attention sort of on the outskirts of town, because that's where they usually are. There's going to be ones every now and then. There's one that's like right in the middle of a small city. We actually own one in Akron, New York, that's like that. For the most part, they're going to be on outskirts of cities, and they're going to be along main roads. And occasionally you'll see them out in the country a little bit further out from the city, maybe like 5 miles. But that's kind of where they focus their attention on. So once they've done that, they'll send that back to me. I'll try to find all the ones they've highlighted in yellow. And then I'll also do my own just rough search. Again, like you said, they're pretty easy to spot. Mobile home park is it's not like trying to find, apartment complexes or anything like that. This mobile home park's pretty distinct.
Sure.
So it's not terribly difficult, but again, it is time consuming, and that's why you should give that task to a VA.
So now once we have this list, Charles, what do we do after that point in time?
Yeah. So once you have that, this is almost simultaneous during the list building process, but I want to kind of take it step by step. That same VA who's doing this, there's a tool that you can use on Google Earth. It's called Parlay 2.0. And you can get that tool by going to reportallusa.com. And it's one of their products. And basically all it is a Google Earth overlay. And what this overlay is it taps into county records, and it puts up a little box. And what it does is it outlines all of the parcels for all of those areas. So it's pretty neat in that regard that it's basically a GIS system for the entire country. And it'll give you a little box, and that box will have the owner's name. It'll have their address, and then sometimes it'll have some other things like the last sale and everything else. So while that VA is actually plotting those parks, they're also going to be pulling that data out and databasing it at the same exact time. That's more or less the front end process that handles your base list of what you could potentially buy from a list sourcing company. But again, you can buy a list from a list sourcing company in about 5 minutes, just going through a questionnaire. Whereas this, if you chose to go into a metro market like Tampa, it might take you in your VA maybe a week to get through this process.
Mm-hmm. And just to clarify, Charles, Parlay 2.0, the resource I know that you use, does that cost money or is that a free resource?
It does cost money. It's I think it's $300 annually.
Okay, but it's a no-brainer. I mean, it will make their job. Let me ask you this, Charles. What did you do before Parlay 2.0 came? Just so they can get an idea of what it looked like beforehand.
Beforehand, what I had to do with that, beforehand, I actually handled it myself because it was so complicated to train a VA on. You would actually have to use all of the different county record systems for each county. And the way you would do that, there was a website called netronline.com. We still do this to do environmental checks because that website it's a really good due diligence tool, but it also taps into county record systems and provides all the links. So if I want to go to the GIS system for a specific county, I would go over there, navigate around and find it. And then what you have to do is you have to learn how to use that county's GIS system. And there's a few states that have, Massachusetts is a state that what they've done is they've congregated all of their GIS systems into one. So no matter what county you're in, it's all the same. But most states aren't like that. Most states, neighboring counties will use different GIS systems, and some of them are very antiquated and hard to use. Others are good. So by paying $300 a year, you're going to probably save yourself months of time. Okay.
So it's worth it.
Yeah. Unless, I don't know how much you're paying your VA to do this, but, or if you can train them to do it, but it's a no-brainer.
So if you want to fast track your results, then definitely pay the $300, get the subscription to Parlay 2.0 so that you wouldn't do it any other way nowadays, right? That's where I was trying to go with this.
I would never do it. If Parlay 2.0 was $5,000, I'd probably still do it.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. So what next, Charles?
Yeah. So after you get that list, what you're going to notice is you're going to notice that a lot of these parks are owned in LLCs and in corporations. So obviously what you want to do with that, I mean, you can certainly at that point start sending mail to people, and I would encourage you to do that. But what you're going to find is that mail is going to get, a lot of that mail is going to get returned, or it's not going to get opened by a decision maker. So I want you to imagine if, oftentimes a lot of these owners will actually have the mail from the county go to the park office, which that means the park manager is the one controlling that mail. So if you're sending a solicitation to buy the park, that's probably not going to make it to an owner, because I think most park managers know they're going to get fired if the park sells. So what we do is we dig into those entities, and what we're trying to find the owner's actual name, because the letter you send that owner now can be more personalized. So instead of it being whatever mobile home park LLC, it can be now the owner's name, and that's a lot more personalized. So very easy to do. There's a website. It's secstates.com, and it's a congregation of, it basically provides 50 links to all 50 states' Secretary of State database. And you have to learn how to use each one of the Secretary of State sites. But what I do with this is I go in, I learn how to use it, and I create a video, and then I send that video to my VA so that they can learn how to use it. I don't really let them do, there's some times where it's hard, like the owner's trying to hide from you almost. Most times it's not like that. So if there's very basic steps they can do that are very consistent, I give that to them. And if they can't get the results of getting the owner's name, then again, they'll highlight that in yellow, and then it'll come back to me. I'm a whole lot better than they are at this. So I'll take all the hard ones and they'll do all the easy ones. So it generally works out to where they'll get about 90% of them done, and I'll take the remaining 10%.
Mm-hmm. Are there any states, Charles, where it's nearly impossible to track down the ownership information of an entity? Are there any states? I know Delaware is one of them. Are there any other states that are nearly impossible like Delaware is?
Delaware is very difficult. There's other ways to do it in Delaware, because even when owners try to hide, they make mistakes, and sometimes their address that they use sometimes ties back to their name anyways through other avenues. So Delaware is really hard. There's actually quite a few states that now require you to pay for looking at the annual reports, which usually has the owners listed on them. Montana is one of those. I think they charge $10 an entity. So,
oh wow,
yeah, we're still debating on whether or not we're going to do that in Montana or not, since it's so far away from our home base. But if that was a southeastern market, then we do it. So it's kind of up to you guys which what you do, but there are certain states that do require you to pay to get this information. There's others. Delaware is an example of a state that you can't get it. If you're researching, I'll take a step back and go back to list building. If you're researching county records in California, they've changed some laws over there to where they've made it a lot more difficult. So California is pretty hard, but I don't think a lot of people want to go into California anyways. So you will run into unique challenges state by state, area by area. You just have to work through it.
Okay, sounds good. So at this point in time, we've got a list of parks. We've got we dug into the entities, and now we know who the owners are of these communities. Now, what do we do at that point in time, Charles?
Yeah, the next step is, and again, once you get past this step, now you have the owner's name, and you should have at least a mailing address for most of them that go directly to them. They don't hit a secretary's office. They don't hit a park owner or a park manager's office, or they don't, go to their registered agent or anything like that. So you can actually get mailed to them, but the next step is really to refine those addresses and phone numbers. And there's been a lot of laws that have changed in privacy. We used to handle this part of it in-house. The laws regarding privacy and things are changing so rapidly. We've seen what's happened in Facebook and elsewhere. That's probably not the greatest example, but these laws are changing so rapidly that now we outsource this to a skip tracing firm. And those are easy to find. You can go on Upwork and you can find a professional skip tracer. I usually like to use a US-based skip tracer because, again, those privacy laws have changed to where overseas skip tracing is starting to become a thing of the past as well. So use a US-based skip tracer and sort of, in a way, kind of shift the liability over there, because they're the ones that are really paying attention to this stuff, and we don't have an interest in paying attention to these laws. We just want them to pay attention to them and help us get this information. What's that?
I was going to ask you. And so the skip tracer, they'd be essentially, you said, refining that list. So they would be essentially finding any alternate mailing addresses, phone numbers, other sources or methods of contacting the owners of the parks. Is that correct?
That's correct. So I'll kind of walk through our ownership profile is really, it's an aged population in mobile home parks. So your average owner is going to be somewhere around 60 to 70 years old. What's true about that demographic is that a lot of these owners still have landline phones at their house. So you can find those through white pages pretty easily, as long as you have like somewhat close to their real mailing address or a mailing address they've used in the past maybe 3 or 4 years. So you can still find landline phones through like white pages. So when you send to the skip tracer, though, one of the things you're going to get as a service from the skip tracer is they're going to have things like, they're going to have access to websites like ancestry.com. They're going to be able to tap into credit bureaus, and they're going to be able to tap into all of these different resources to where special situations, like let's say the owner has died and you need to figure out who the next of kin is. Well, we used to have ancestry.com for this purpose, but it's, again, there's so many resources that you need to handle all these different special circumstances that you'll run into. You'll get that with a skip tracer, and they'll be able to track down, they'll be able to tell you, okay, this owner's deceased now. Here are the next of kins. This is, who I feel like, based on what I know about skip tracing, this is probably the person in priority of who you need to contact. So you're going to get stuff like that. You're going to get their cell phone numbers most of the time, which is, again, as owner, the ownership profile is actually getting younger. It's gotten younger since we've started. So you're going to find that a lot of people they're not going to have landline phones. Cell phones are like the name of the game now. So you can get that stuff. It's even starting to get to the point now where we're starting to be able to get email addresses for owners. That's still probably a couple of years away, but for instance, the Secretary of State system in Georgia to file an annual report requires you to put an email address. That's a very simple way to get email addresses in the state of Georgia. So skip tracers, they're just going to be able to do it a lot better than you anyways. And they're also paying attention to the privacy laws to keep you out of trouble.
Well, that sounds great, Charles. So is that essentially the nuts and bolts of building this database? Is there anything else that one would need to know or understand before compiling a comprehensive database of mobile home park owners?
Yeah, you need to be, when you're building your database, I would say, and this is a mistake that I made over and over again as we progressed in marketing to our database, is you need to build it in such a way and gather as much data as you possibly can, because you never know where your marketing is going to take you and how you're going to try to segment out that list to handle specific types of ownership groups. So for instance, you might say something in a message to an owner who, let's say the owner is local to the park, they lives within 30 or 40 miles. You might say something very different to that person in your marketing than you would to, let's say, if you're trying to market to us to buy a park. That would be two different conversations. If you can try to sort of segment out your list between different types of ownership groups that make sense to, different marketing messages might go to, that's something you should be sensitive to. You should also be sensitive to gathering as much data as humanly possible on that prospect. I mean, you want to have their age. We even get their birthday in there. Just because, I don't know, one day we might want to start sending birthday cards out. I don't know. Yeah. But we do that. We try to collect as much as we possibly can so that we can better market to and serve that customer list. Okay. So once you get your database sort of complete at that point, like you've got your leads back from your skip tracer, the last step, it's sort of a quality control step. And this is a step that you can have your VA do, or you can do whatever you want to do. I like to spot check. But what we do is we take that owner's address, that finalized, this is where the mail is going to go, where we're going to send it, and take that address and send it back through Google Earth. And, most people that are of that age demographic, they own their own home. They don't rent. So if you go over to their house, where their house is on Google Earth, and you click on that Parlay 2.0 button and see their name as the owner, then that's sort of a confirmation that you've got the right address. So we like to do that. Any addresses that we can't confirm like that, we might have them go back into the skip tracing process. Our mailing we're sort of perfectionists over here. Our mailing campaigns, I think our delivery rate is it's over 90%. Mm-hmm. As far as the return mail that we get back. And I know that in single family homes, when we used to buy lists and stuff, that we were probably more like 70. So you can get really, really super accurate. And these databases aren't huge either. So, there's only about maybe 50, 60,000 mobile home parks in the entire country. So you can get very detailed and get very, very accurate. And it's definitely worthwhile to take the extra steps to do that.
Yeah, no. And for those out there that actually have done direct mail in the past, Charles had kind of mentioned accuracy of a residential list versus this list here that he's teaching you how to build. It's a small list. It's incredibly targeted. And you got to remember, there's not a lot of people doing this out there. And so your response rates are going to be much higher than what you might have been used to in the residential space. And that's assuming that you're a residential investor or you've done direct mail before. There's been many times we received a darn near double-digit response rates, Charles, but I'd say the average is probably somewhere around, 4 or 5% from our mailing campaigns? Yeah,
what's been interesting for us lately is that we've started going into some different marketing techniques where we try to sort of imagine like the ideal seller and market directly to that person. It's a little bit of it's a marketing technique. And what happens is the response rate takes a little bit of a dip, but your overall closing ratio goes up. Or goes down, I guess you could say. So the closing ratio we used to have was around 1 in 1,700. And our closing ratio today is 1 in 900. So if I send out 900 letters, we'll eventually close one deal out of that. Whereas before it took 1,700 letters because we weren't as targeted. But the nice thing has been that the response rate has reduced in addition to that, not by much, but it has reduced a little bit. So the amount of time that our that our acquisitions team has to spend on the phone to get one deal is completely different than it used to be maybe 3 or 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm. No, that's absolutely the truth. Well, with that, Charles, I tell you that I know that in the past we've done other episodes on this topic and such, and have done some other trainings, more audio-based trainings. And there's definitely folks that have taken this information from the podcast, and you surely can do that. I mean, we presented these last 3 episodes in a way that you could take this information and implement it in your business right away. But for those that actually want a more comprehensive lay of the land, more of a hand-holding process and video support as well, to where you're actually watching the video presentation of how to do each of these things that we've discussed in these last 3 episodes, in addition to many other items. And that's really where the Deal Finders formula comes into play. And that's really how we've repackaged it in its new format. And so, Charles, maybe take a few minutes and just go over maybe some of the bullet points of what's included in this new revamped version and what buyers could expect to receive from it.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much that we've included in this course, but really the highlights. I'm gonna give you 6 things that are really the highlights of the course, and they're really the reason why we developed the course in the first place, because nothing like this exists. The first one is we do a step-by-step of market research and then defining your investment criteria. Right, so we'll take a first stab at defining your investment criteria, and we'll go into the steps of market research and market selection. From there, everything we just covered in this show, we cover in, I think that, this show is probably going to be about 30, 40 minutes, but in the Deal Finders formula, everything that we do is a video based. And I think in the database section, we cover that in about 3 or 4 hours. So it's a much more in-depth, how to do the database section, that's included in that. And then the next thing, the third thing would be we cover marketing. So we sort of alluded to that in this show of how we niche down to sort of improve our closing ratio. We cover the process for which you can do that. And then you cover negotiations, Kevin, and it's brilliant part of the course is the way that you cover negotiations. After that, it's offer writing. I think that's a huge stumbling block for a lot of people, is once we've got a deal that we need to, sign up under contract. It's like, what do you do? But how do you do that? So we've provided instructions on how to write an LOI and how to write a contract, and we actually have a sample contract you can use. In addition to, obviously there's generally good advice to use an attorney to do your contracts, but we also provide a sort of a baseline for that attorney to work from on your behalf. The next one that we've included in this, it was not included in the original Deal Finders formula, which is it's the complete section on due diligence. So we've included that into this version of the course, and it's a very comprehensive step-by-step on how to perform due diligence. And then the final thing is we have a Facebook owners group that many of our former students who are also Park investors are a part of, and we're also a part of, whereby if you need questions answered, if you want to try to find a partner, that's the place where you can pretty much do any of that stuff and interact with people who are trying to do the same thing that you're doing. Because, really, I know, speaking from my own standpoint, when I first got started, before I met Kevin, is I spent about 7 or 8 months, and I was the only person that I knew in the entire world who was interested in buying a mobile home park. So you guys can avoid having that and having everyone tell you're crazy by being a part of a community that is also trying to do the same exact thing you're doing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You make a good point there. I mean, we are kind of we're the outliers of the real estate industry. I mean, there's some other niche assets out there, but mobile home parks are probably one of the bigger niches, or I guess smaller niches is the best way to put it. But we'll make sure that you're not alone. Right.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And Charles, just to I know you gave some bullet points of what's included there, but it's incredibly comprehensive. So like, as you had mentioned about the database building, we went through it here today in like 30 or 40 minutes, but really there's probably 3 or 4 hours worth of video training inside the Deal Finders formula. In addition to the other sections of the Deal Finders formula, I mean, it's hours upon hours of training, but not just in an audio format, also a visual format, which I know most people have a much easier time comprehending than listening to an audio like we're doing here and actually putting it into action. Again, there's plenty of folks I know that have done that have listened to our past shows. And that's kind of how we put together our shows. Isn't just to give you a teaser. It's actually to give you the mechanics and how to actually put it into action. But it's challenging. I'm actually a visual person myself. I would not be able to personally, Charles, listen to our show here today and go put that into action. You might be able to, but I'm not. I'm not that type of person. I'm a visual learner. And so that's really what the Deal Finders formula is. It's a visual training program that walks you through everything step by step in a very comprehensive manner to ensure that you're building that database correctly, that you're doing your marketing correctly, and due diligence. That section is vitally important. I mean, finding a great deal, getting it tied up is one thing. But if you don't know what to do after that point in time, you don't understand how to identify some of the big gotchas out there that could really sink your ship after you purchase it, then you're failing yourself and you're failing your investors if you're raising capital for deals. Like, you have to understand how to get through the due diligence of a community and uncover any of the big unknowns, the ones that are going to essentially cost you tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars should they arise after you close on the deal. So, Charles, I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to add to that, but I know we're incredibly excited about it. Again, it's been a kind of a revamp work of progress for the past year, trying to figure out a way to offer this to folks that have had a continual interest without it getting to the point to where it just stretched our bandwidth too thin, and we didn't have the ability to offer the personalized support that we like to do. I mean, that's kind of that's our nature, right? That's who we are. We want to help people. We don't want to just sell them something and then let them run off into the sunset. We want to make sure they've got everything. They've got everything they need at hand to make informed decisions and to be successful in this business. And that's what this new program is. So
could have said it more perfect myself. So yeah.
Okay. Well, with that being said, Charles, is there anything else regarding the databasing process? Again, this is a 3-part series. The first part, we talked about the broker initiative, or actually you and Brian talked about the broker initiative. Last week, we went into the market research process, how to identify and research markets to invest in. And then today was, again, the last piece of that puzzle so that folks can start marketing to off-market deals. It was the database. And so is there anything else that we need to leave folks with regarding the database creation process before we wrap it up for the day?
Yeah, I would say if you're interested in doing the databasing process, what I would do is, I would definitely take this audio and start going step by step. Just follow the instructions. And but approach it from the standpoint that you're going to start putting VAs in front of some of these repetitive tasks and start building your own system and process based around how you want to create it and how big it needs to be. And that's a much better way to approach it than to try to look at this overwhelming task that is, starting from zero and trying to get 500 leads. Mm-hmm. Because I know from personal experience that when you first start this, it just looks like a big mountain to climb. So just really approach from the standpoint that you're not going to do all the work. And I think it'll be a lot easier to bite it off at that point.
All right. Well, good deal. Then that's all we have for today's episode, guys. Just want to give you the reminder to go grab your free due diligence training video that we put together for you. Again, free of charge, no catch whatsoever, no strings attached. All you have to do is go to DD, and that stands for due diligence, dd.sunrisecapitalinvestors.com. Also, be sure to stop by the Mobile Home Park Academy website at mobilehomeparkacademy.com. You can listen to all of our previous podcast shows. We've got a lot of them out there. We've got probably close to 100 hours worth of valuable content that will help you become successful in this business. And just want to thank you again for stopping by and joining us here at the Mobile Home Park Investing Podcast. And as always, it's been an absolute pleasure serving you. Take care.
Congratulations for taking the necessary steps to achieving massive success through the highly lucrative niche of mobile home park investing. Be sure to visit our website, mobilehomeparkacademy.com, to download your free digital ebook version of the 21 biggest mistakes investors make when buying their first mobile home park and how you can avoid them. And while you're there, be sure to subscribe to our free monthly mobile home park investing newsletter, which is jammed full of valuable tips, tricks, and strategies to help you accelerate your path to success as a mobile home park investor. More information about this podcast and its hosts can be found by visiting mobilehomeparkacademy.com.